Hello, dear listener, and welcome to ThriveCast, unlocking your full potential. Your well-being is our priority, and we're here to provide you with practical, heartfelt advice on living your best life. Together, we'll explore identity, purpose, prosperity mindset, authenticity, and so much more. So grab your headphones and get ready. Your journey starts now. So, welcome everyone to ThriveCast, Unlocking Your Full Potential. I'm Oscar. I'm an emotional fitness coach, and I help people find clarity around their emotions so they can unlock their inner wisdom and essentially their inner connection to God and divinity within. And with me today, I have Katarina Hansens Carlson. You want to introduce yourself, Katarina?
Thank you, Oscar. So I'm your brilliance consultant. You may have been dumbed down at school, but I bring out your brilliance. It's called educare. So I bring out the brilliance in children in schools. I bring out your entrepreneurial brilliance because that's what we're all about, our unique brilliance. So, all right. So today we are going to talk about healing trauma. Yeah. So first of all, we need to define what is trauma. So, Oscar, what is trauma?
Wow. Well, I would like to look at trauma as we have a tendency to say that it needs to be something that is excruciatingly painful. But we have to understand also as children that anything essentially can be excruciatingly painful, because you can see that children starts crying or laughing extremely easily at a young age. So if a child, for instance, starts crying and their dad or mother says, "Don't cry," that in itself, that little thing can instantly become a trauma, because you're essentially not allowing the child to experience an emotion. So when an emotion is not allowed to fully be completed within, that causes a split inside of us where we disassociate from the emotion and we put it in a box, and then we go on with our lives. But at the same time as that happens, we limit ourselves. We limit an expression because we learned that we're not allowed to have it. So a trauma can essentially be a very small thing, and you can experience traumas around your life almost daily. Everything has to do with the degree to which you are aware of it occurring. But also, obviously, there are these very, very painful things that we all can happen to face, like abuse or rape or murder, that essentially causes us to completely disassociate from anything that is happening and forget it, which causes problems further down in our life. What would you say, Katarina?
All right. Trauma is a reaction from a life-threatening experience. So for a little child, it would be abandonment. For example, if the mother disappears, the child would react, my mother's not there, so am I going to die? And this emotion can continue and continue till it becomes almost like a death. So, as you say, Oscar, rape, murder, sexual abuse, incest, abandonment, war, just being, in a war situation where you're facing cannons, where you're facing guns, and you're supposed to duty call, so you're supposed to run against that. I mean, it's complete insanity. But I'm sure almost every single soldier has been traumatized because we're creating a traumatic situation. Okay, so there's trauma that happens one time, which is acute. Then there's chronic trauma, which happens over and over again. And then there's complex, which happens like almost, regularly, very, very regularly. So this trauma, yes, I'm coming into my next question now.
No worries.
How does unhealed trauma affect our lives?
I mean, in so many ways. Essentially, wherever a person feels stuck, or wherever someone feels that there's a negative emotion that is on repeat, that is an indication of trauma, which we're coming to later as well. But this means that you form your life around an avoidant or a conflict-based lifestyle. If you're having a trauma and which caused you to avoid the situation, then most likely you use that as a coping strategy. You use the coping strategy of avoiding things in your life, which causes yourself to limit the way you're being with people, with friends, with family, and you limit your way of expression. And obviously that causes you to not like yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're looking at it and saying, well, I cannot handle this. So there's a little bit of a self-hatred going on. Now, the other way is obviously that you can be more prone to being reactive, which means that you become the bully in other people's lives. So the way you deal with trauma is essentially just pointing fingers, being aggressive, being reactive, and you don't understand why people look at you with despise. And you just keep on being more and more angry because people are despising the way you are acting. But the reason why you're acting in the first place the way you are is because of trauma. And so what this and then after a while, because we are habitual creatures, it becomes a habit, the way you're expressing yourself, and then it becomes your identity, and then it becomes your worldview. It becomes the very paradigm with which you exist. So you start seeing that I am an angry human being. It becomes your identity. It becomes your prime directive. So that will be the way you act with life. But it's not true, but it's based on your own idea that was seeded very, very early in your life. So obviously, you completely limit your way of being and acting and engaging with the world. So trauma is essentially everything. If you take care of your trauma, you have the capacity to choose not only what you want to feel, but what you want to experience in life. You, Katarina?
So, how does unhealed trauma affect your life in every way? In every way. Because what happens is that either you become, like Oscar said, you become a bully, you become a tyrant, and you try to control people, or you become a victim. Either or. And neither situation is a joyful situation. It's a struggle the whole time, because how can you control others? You shouldn't. You have no business controlling others. And we have no business being a victim either, because nobody is trying to hurt us. And if they are, they shouldn't be in your life. And often a traumatized person, a victim, will choose to have someone come into their lives who is abusive, because they think they can change them, heal them. But what they need to do is heal themselves.
Yeah, and I would love to add that there too. The reason why we're also attracting these people into our life is that we're also addicted to the emotions that we become accustomed to feel, and that we associate being our identity. But it's all unconscious. It's not that you really want it, because no one really wants to feel bad, but you can't see that you're in this addictive relationship with your own emotions, that the other person plays a part in perpetuating in your relationship. So you can continuously be in this negative downward spiral, whether it is in a reactive or in a very repressive kind of way.
Exactly. So when a traumatized person begins to wake up, let's say they're in victim mode, and realize that everything they think about other people comes from their trauma. They think, oh, well, people are like this, they're like that, they're aggressive, they're just out for what they can get. If you're starting to think like that, go back to the most painful occurrence in your life, because that's where it comes from. So, yes, how does it affect our lives? It affects everything. Our identity, it affects how we react, it affects our relationships, it affects our work, our finances, allting. Totally. So the best way is to heal it. That's the only way. So how do we heal trauma, Oscar?
Yeah. Well, first we have to start recognizing what is it that we no longer want in our life. We take a very grand assessment and seeing like, no, I've had it with this pattern. Usually happening one time, we can just let it go. But if it is a repeated pattern and we see that it limits us and we sense that here's pain, whether we are becoming reactive towards our environment, or we're repressive, or we even freezing, we have to recognize what that is. And as we're recognizing that, then we have to go a step deeper and acknowledge, well, what happens in my body? Where is this, where is this occurring? Where is this situated in our body? Because your body is it is a mirror of what you're also experiencing thought and emotion wise, and what is occurring around you. And when you start noticing, oh, I feel this strain in my heart, I feel this pain in my belly, Then you become aware of that. You put your own awareness there. Then you start looking at what is the emotion, because as we spoke about earlier, it is about you understanding what is the emotion you're feeling, but the emotion you're feeling on a regular basis. Is it inadequacy? Is it hostility? Is it victimhood? Is it hatred? All of that is like, it produces chemicals that you become addicted to. And we start noticing, what is that? What is that? What is those emotions? And you start detecting, oh, it is in this occurrence, it is in that occurrence. Then you start becoming aware of what is going on in your subconscious. And from there, you detect what are the thoughts. And from there, you detect, well, what memory is attached to this? Because usually when the behavior happens, you might not be able to detect what is the memory. But when you come to the point of you understand the emotion and the thought that is behind it, the memory just opens up. It just brings the vision of what happened here.
Yeah.
And obviously in that memory, you were not allowed to feel whatever you felt. And so you need to complete that memory.
Mm.
And you complete that memory also by recognizing, well, what would actually be the need in this situation? And the beauty is that your mind cannot tell the difference of what is real or what is imagined. So when you give what you actually needed in this situation, and with the understanding that your mind works in metaphors. What does that mean? Well, it means that you might need to strangle someone in your memory in order to complete an emotion. I know it sounds horrible. Sometimes you might need to, or you want to hug them, or you want to forgive them, right? But the whole point is this, that you need to experience the emotion. You need to experience hatred. You need to experience the completion of hatred, the completion of anger, the completion of inadequacy, and so forth. And then you move through that emotion, and then another emotion is occurring, obviously, until you come to the point of utter forgiveness, where you take full responsibility of whatever it was that occurred in your life and understand that you were the one who created it. And therefore you forgive yourself, you forgive the other person, and you forgive God. If you come to that point, then the trauma disappears, because you simply have come to the place where you already understand that I created it. And there's no one to blame. And I cannot even blame. And you let go of whatever it was that was caused to you, because you're simply fulfilling your own need from the inside. That's a long explanation,
Yeah.
but that is essentially, from my point of view, what would ultimately heal it.
Exactly. So experience every emotion. I would also add to that, you need to recreate the situation and express full out. Now, I'm also a psychotherapist. And time after time after time, I tried to get my clients to express, and they wouldn't. It's too painful. It's too hard. They don't want to go back there. They don't want to remember.
Yeah.
They just want me to fix them. So I created a situation where I became them. So they told me everything that happened to them and how they felt. and what they thought. So then we switched roles, and I became the traumatized person. But I expressed myself to my tormentor, right? Fully. So I would have to go into that feeling, that expression. I might be like 3 years old, 5 years old, and I would talk like a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, and express back. When I did that, something shifted with my client because they felt heard and seen, maybe for the first time ever in that situation. And then, of course, then I become the tormentor. But I'm quiet. I'm listening. And they express back. And the results are amazing. And it's quick. It's effective. But you've got to be completely honest and really go in to the healing expression. And it works. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So next.
Yeah, I can add to that, and that's a great way of doing it. I also, the way I do it is that I just use, because everyone has problems that occurs in their life, and the only thing they need essentially is just reconnecting to whatever it is that the situation that they don't like, and that situation in itself has an emotion attached to it. And as long as someone is in a safe space, because safety is everything. If you don't have safety, then you're not able to explore it. So it is essentially when that's why sometimes for therapy to be even helpful in any way, the therapist needs to be empathetic and with their client, so the client feels in a safe space, because otherwise it won't be able to express fully of what is occurring. The other thing is that I usually guide people to have an inner conversation, and I know where they are in their inner conversation, just because I want people to grasp and do it for themselves. Because it's essentially about people being able to become their own healers.
Yes, absolutely.
Because otherwise we're just becoming the teachers, and they become the students, and they go to us every time they need help, which is not the point, obviously.
No, the point is self-healing and mastery over self-healing.
Yeah.
So, okay. So yes. The next question is, how can we perceive trauma in a way that is uplifting and healing? What's the last step of perceiving trauma?
The last step of perceiving trauma. You have to, maybe you should start.
Yes, I can start.
Yeah.
So, if you think about it, the truth is that the whole universe is for us. God is for us. So we don't have to forgive God for anything, because God has done nothing against us. We often blame God. God is not responsible. We are. So everything I attract into my life, I'm responsible for. And it doesn't matter whether I'm 5 years old or 3 years old or 13 years old or 20 years old. It doesn't matter, because I created it. So when we own our trauma and say, and that's a very, very, very hard thing to do, because then we have to stop blaming. We have to say that was not their fault. They were a victim as well at that point. Now, let's say somebody hit me when I was 5 years old, hit me, beat me at 5 years old. that person you would think was a bad person. You would think it was, for example, a bad father. You would think, oh, he's a tyrant. He's wrong. He should be put in jail. You know, how could he beat a little child? In my experience, someone who's an aggressor like that, who can, I mean, I can hardly understand how you could possibly beat a little child. You know, for me, it's almost beyond understanding, but it does happen. That person, when he or she is confronted, restrained, or met with violence, they will go straight into victim and they will never beat you again. Right. Now, that's not easy for a little 3-year-old or 5-year-old. But if that something has happened to you when you were very, very young, and you say, I own it. They were a victim. I was a victim, but they were also a victim. They couldn't help their behavior. They were so traumatized, they couldn't help their behavior. Why? Because they had been victimized before. And if you say to yourself, okay, so what did I learn from that? Well, number one, I survived it. Number two, I know I'm never going to create that situation again because I don't need to. Number three, I went through so much pain. I woke up in this lifetime. I woke up and I became an extraordinary person. And if you look at the most extraordinary people in the world and you look at their childhood, often, not always, but often, it's abusive. So if you can be a master, I have to say it, a Christ, and say, that was my initiation. Now I'm a master of my life. Now I can create the heaven in my life because I created a hell. So, Oscar, what do you have to say?
Well, now since you went to that degree, right? Then I also would love for the listener to understand that we're continuously on a journey as human beings, which means that we will always find new things that we can get more and more healed and more, find more and more zest for life, more and more things that where we're being our authentic self with other people. And so this trauma or whatever we've experienced is we can find out it's like, oh yes, it's fully healed, but it also puts us into this exploration of life, of human existence, of how everything works in our society. So it's like this trauma or these emotions that carries through it, they become finer and finer, and you start detecting it. It's almost like it becomes this sensitive instrument where you start perceiving and noticing things in not just you, but in other people and in society and in world views, right? And since you brought up Christ, Katarina, let me go to this degree. Because, well, trauma, okay, so I got hurt because my dad did something to me. And his dad, and my dad, he got hurt because his dad did something to him. And it goes all the way back, right? And this is where myths and Christ and the Bible and everything around this is erupting from. And that's why we're also have these enormous questions inside of ourselves. Who are we? Where did we come from? And why are we here? And no one hasn't fully been able to, explain this, which is one of the parts of this mystery of life that is an ongoing experience. But if we were to look at these things, and what is the original trauma? Well, the absolute original trauma is the fall from grace. It's the falling from our connection to our divine. And the full completion of a trauma, because everything is a collective experience. You may feel that, oh, this is unique for me, but everyone has something. And that ties back to the absolute original trauma of not being connected to God. And that's what this whole thing essentially is back. So when someone is completely healed, well, then it is, as Katarina says, then you are the Christ. And so far, we haven't seen Christ experience, or we haven't seen fully the full embodiment of Christ in our in our world. So and that is why it's also beautiful to read about the Bible, or read about who these beings were, and to tune into this myth. And that comes as a result of us going, first of all, and experiencing these traumas, and then starting understanding what is happening inside of us, but then what is happening in humanity, and then what is happening in the universe, and so forth. It becomes an ever-evolving phase. And for us, it is important to understand that it is not about, it's lovely to grow, but we shouldn't feel traumatized because we're not healed enough. That's very important to understand, because then we can be addicted to healing. I would like to add that.
Yes, and that's what we're going to talk about next week, healing addiction.
Yeah.
Before we go on, before we stop this podcast, I'd like to say that many psychologists and many psychotherapists would not agree with me. They would say, for example, sexual abuse it can be healed to a certain extent, it can't be healed completely. You have to live with it. And I've heard one psychotherapist say, you have to choose somebody who is also sexually abused and have a relationship together. For me, that would be complete hell, because you would project onto each other. In every relationship, we project. And we project our greatest traumas, and we try to change the other person. Doesn't work. The only one we can change is ourselves, obviously. But what I would like to say is sexual abuse, any kind of abuse, can be totally healed when you go through the stages of healing, fully express, fully experience, fully express, and finally own it and say, I created that. And now I'm going to create an amazing life, a joyful life. So
yeah, exactly as you're saying there, Katarina. I would like to add to that too. It's like you create the emotion or the way you want to experience life instead of the way you previously experienced life. It's essentially you start becoming the one who constructs the way and the beautiful emotions you want to experience with your environment.
Okay, so Oscar, how do people reach you?
Okay, you reach me by coming to my website, realitydecoding.com, or you can go to Live Your Purpose on Facebook. And I also have a YouTube channel that is called Oscar Nygren. And you, Katarina?
Yes, so on LinkedIn, I'm Catherine Carlson. I prefer Katarina Hansens Carlson. I've changed my name because I've changed. So I've changed my name from Catherine, who is very serious, to Katarina, who is much more lighthearted. Doesn't mean to say I'm less intelligent, not at all. Katarina Hansens Carlson on LinkedIn is my true name. Catherine Carlson on LinkedIn. And I will leave a link so that you can connect with me on my calendar, book a call. And if you've had trauma, book a call with me. So next week, it is healing addiction. Welcome back. And thank you for watching.
Yes, thank you, everyone. This was great. Take care.